The first day I saw Pollak Cooper was when she entered the courtroom. She was handcuffed and led in by a prison matron. And she was laughing and smiling when she entered the courtroom, and I thought, you just killed my Nana and yet you're laughing. Well, you won't be laughing when this day is over.
I worked for an organization dedicated to freeing people that had been wrongfully convicted. I worked on hundreds of cases. Some of my clients became exonerated, but the overwhelming majority remain in prison.
Pollak Cooper became the youngest female in the United States on death row. She was 15 at the time.
From 2014 to 2017, I interviewed people that had committed violent crimes as children and were sentenced to die in prison.
My faith is asking me to forgive.
As well as victims who had lost loved ones to murder committed by a young person.
Not just a play, but a plea to society to listen. Playwright Elizabeth Weill-Greenberg is taking a hard look at juveniles in the justice system in her docuplay, Life, Death, Life Again, Children Sentenced to Die in Prison. A Collab Arts production presented at Monmouth University, this show features real stories featuring the words of people that have lived them. We're here at rehearsal to talk to the creators behind this important show. What is this play about?
Life, Death, Life Again, Children Sentenced to Die in Prison is about kids who were sentenced to die in prison for crimes that they committed when they were juveniles. It's a series of monologues based on interviews that I conducted with people convicted of crimes that occurred when they were children or teenagers, as well as the grandson of a woman who was murdered by a teenager.
Why did you want to write a docuplay on this subject?
I wanted to write this play because I worked at the Innocence Project for many years, and at one of our national conferences, I was listening to monologues being performed by exonerees, and most of the monologues were about the cruelty of prison and the abuses that they had suffered. But what I kept thinking about was, do we only care about these stories? Do we only see these people as people because they're innocent of these really terrible crimes that they were convicted of? And I thought, I want to share the stories of people who are guilty and to show their humanity too. I also felt it was important to show that victims aren't a monolithic group. Some survivors of violent crime, choose forgiveness and reconcile with the person who's caused harm. And so I wanted to try to put those stories together because I knew that if I only shared the stories of people who had caused harm, that the audience would be left asking, but what about the victims?
What do you think Elizabeth's work has brought to this issue?
Elizabeth is incredibly strong at bringing lots of people to the table who are invested in these advocacy areas. With the play, we've also created strong panel discussions where we use the story itself to anchor larger conversations with some of the state and the country's leading experts in juvenile life sentencing. And I've been told by several audience members that we actually do change minds. They leave the performance very much feeling like there is a lot of growth and a lot of reform that's required in our justice system.
How did you discover this play?
Elizabeth reached out to me asking if she could work with us, knowing that Collab Arts has a strong track record for presenting the stories of advocacy organizations as well as disenfranchised communities.
How does this play fit into the mission of Collab Arts?
Collab Arts' mission is to engage artists with social advocacy organizations and communities to create transformative new work. Where it comes into the mission directly is that idea of transformation. How can you document stories of your entire community and actually have a lasting impact? How do you create a piece that reverberates after it's finished?
This show is being presented at Monmouth University. Tell me more about that partnership.
We've been touring Life, Death, Life Again around the state and also to Philadelphia, working with partners who have a community for whom this story should be told. That includes university partners, juvenile justice partners, law partners. Monmouth University was really excited about using this story as continuing education for their social work students and professionals.
What do you say to people who can't see past these crimes and who don't believe in rehabilitation?
That's kind of who I wrote the play for, really. When you start seeing someone as a human being, and maybe you see your son or daughter in the people in the play, or maybe you see yourself in them as a kid, that's when your mind and your heart can start to change, and you can start to see like they deserve a second chance.
What do you think we can do better as a country for these kids?
The US is the only country in the world that sentences kids to die in prison. And there's a reason for that, and it's because it is such a really horrific and inhumane thing to do. There's been all of this research to show that your brain is still developing, until you're 25. And this is why we should not condemn kids to spend the rest of their lives in prison. Restorative justice should be a bigger part of our conversation. Instead of focusing on punishment, you can have accountability where there's also some sort of reconciliation between the person who's caused harm and the person who experienced harm.
What do you want people to take away from this show?
The one thing I want people to take away from Life, Death, Life Again is that every statistic has a story, and those stories run deep, and that none of us are very far from the experience of those individuals. We're looking for empathy, we're looking for an understanding, and a willingness to actually make all of our lives better.